Hi there, it's Sarah here, the Able Diabetic. I'm here with another of my videos on the basics of being a type 1 diabetic, and this is the insulin series and the second video. So there are three things that I'm going to cover during the course of this video. The first is, how much insulin do you inject? The second is, can you inject extra insulin? And the third is, what do you do if you've forgotten to take your insulin at a mealtime? So when you're considering how much insulin you should be taking at any given mealtime, you need to take into account a few key factors. First of all, you will learn generally, how much insulin you require to eat a certain amount of carbohydrate. So, whether it's a sandwich or a bowl of pasta or something with some rice, for example, all of those different carbohydrate elements, you'll come to understand that you need a certain amount for those. I typically take about 10 units of insulin for a sandwich, for example. So you'll have that in the background. And then other factors that come into play are, first of all, what your blood sugar is right now before you eat. So if it's high, you may need to make the dose slightly bigger in order to compensate for the fact that you started high, and exactly the opposite if it's low. And then take into account what you're going to be doing over the course of the next few hours, the next kind of 2 to 4 hours. Because if you're going to have a particularly active time, you'll probably need a touch less insulin in anticipation of that, because exercise kind of strengthens the impact of the insulin, and you'll need less insulin. So you need to kind of weigh up these factors. The key thing really is that it's a learning curve for you, and when you're a new diabetic, you need to give yourself lots of space to understand that things impact the dosage in terms of your everyday life. But you will learn, and you will work it out. So, typically when people talk about insulin taken at meal times, they do talk about a dose taken in advance of the meal. And in my case, I'm advised to take my insulin between 15 and 20 minutes before I actually eat, which seems to work very well for me. And, you do the calculation in your own head of what the dose is going to be, and you take that insulin, you eat your meal. Then, I would recommend, within the next hour, check your blood sugars and see how high they've gone. And if they really are going quite high, up to a kind of 12, 13 level perhaps, probably you're going to need a little bit more insulin to bring that blood sugar down to where it needs to be, in the kind of 6, 7, 8 kind of zone, which is what we're always aiming for. So yes, the answer is it is possible to take extra insulin when you need it, at any point actually, when your blood sugars have gone too high, and you can bring it back down through careful application of a bit more insulin. But again, it's something to practice and learn gently. I'd recommend injecting a small amount of insulin to start with, as you learn to kind of, learn what is required for you. But the key thing is, yes, insulin will help you keep your blood sugars in the right place, and you can take a little bit as needed after meals and at any point in time that your blood sugars are too high. I think it might seem a little bit nuts that anyone would forget to take their insulin when it's such a critical part of life. But it's critical, absolutely, but it's also always there, and one of those kind of tedious things that you have to remember all the time. And I know personally that if I'm running around before a meal, getting a meal for my children, dealing with some other things that are going on in the background potentially as well, there are times when I just go, hang on a second, I'm about to eat. Did I actually take my insulin or not? That can be a problem. And sometimes I've eaten the meal when I go, I don't think I took insulin for this meal. So, you do, have the ability to check what your blood sugar levels are. And if I have forgotten, I'll be shooting up really pretty high. That's what happens in my case. And the answer to what do you do is you take some insulin as quickly as you can that's corrective, and that will go in and deal with those high blood sugars. And it is really important that you take what you would have taken for your meal in order to get things down again and monitor things really carefully. So it's not an ideal thing to happen, but it does happen, and in the overall scheme of things, as long as you deal with it quickly, it's okay. I hope that the answers to those questions were useful and give you a bit more insight into some of the things that you need to think about when you're taking insulin as a type 1 diabetic. I'm Sarah, I'm the Able Diabetic. My aim is to support and help other type 1 diabetics, sharing my experience with them so that they can just have a slightly easier time of it and know that there's someone out there who's been through it all as well. You can find more information on my YouTube channel, on my website. Thanks very much for watching.